live, laugh.
How's it going, everybody? This is Daniel.
And I'm Christian.
We are joined by Caleb Konley. How are you doing tonight, Caleb?
What's going on, guys?
This is really exciting because for me, you were like it was like what first or second indie show I ever went to. It's like 2017. I think it was a BTW show. And like you were one of the guys I got to meet. It was super cool. So full circle, this is really fun.
Oh, cool. BTW, you say?
Yeah.
Was that in the Carolinas or was that an up north one?
Yes, it was. I think it's when they finally did one at Dorton for the first little bit. I think it was that show. I might be wrong on that completely.
Was that me versus Trevor?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's when Trevor was everywhere. Like working every show. You couldn't go there without him. That's very cool. So today we're gonna go through kind of your origin story in wrestling, and we're gonna get caught up on everything through Impact, what you're doing now, and like all the fun stuff. I feel like there's a lot to dig into there.
Yeah, we do have a segment where we do talk about the Gilmore Girls. So, yeah,
you guys should have told me in advance. I would have binge watched some Gilmore Girls.
We could do also Entourage. We've got two shows that are kind of old and kind of obscure.
I may have seen a couple episodes of Entourage, but never the Gilmore Girls. Sorry, guys.
Well, this is gonna be a pretty short interview. Awesome. Well, I think before we start off, where can everybody find you? Do you have anything you'd like to promote?
This weekend I'm at Glory Days Wrestling. That's in Salisbury. Then I'm at OSCW on Sunday, and that's in Murrells Inlet, South Carolina. They're doing a big show on the beach.
Oh, that's right.
Man, what am I doing? I got all kinds of stuff coming up. You just check my Instagram, my Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff. You'll find it. I'm always posting about shows.
Awesome. And you mentioned you're wrestling on the beach. I saw a picture the other day of you, I think, wrestling again on a beach, which it's got to be a pretty cool place. When you're wrestling outside, is there any other indications in like preparing for that match that goes into it?
Okay. Well, the beach shows sound really fun, and the atmosphere is great. It's always good when it's sunny, but it's an outside show. We're having a lot of rain these days. So right now I'm prepared. And what's going to happen if it rains? There's also the fact that when it's outside on a beach, you forget about sand. So you got 15, 20, however many wrestlers that are going to be in a ring before you. By the time you get in the ring, you're wrestling on sandpaper, basically.
Yeah.
Every time you hit the mat, you're like coming up and you're scraping, and it's in your boots and it's in your trunks, and it's kind of gross.
Yeah.
It seems real cool though.
Does the ring retain heat?
Yes.
Oh,
absolutely. Like normally, like a WWE colored blue one is not so bad a lot of times, but man, when I first started, I would wrestle on this baseball field, and they had like a vinyl one, like a you've seen them like more like boxing and stuff. They'll have like hard vinyl ones, and those things like in the middle of the day, it's like bumping on fire. It sucks.
Yeah. We saw a show. It was a gouge show, and it was like one of the hottest like days of the summer, and black ropes. You could tell every time somebody hit a rope, they were just like
all of a sudden, like no bumps in a match.
Yeah.
They're working outside. They're doing whatever they can to not take a bump, and it's like, I get it. It's 90 degrees.
Yeah. All of that stuff sounds real fun when you're talking about it, and if it's a nice sunny day, it's good. You have a nice couple midday beers going on, but actually being in the ring, it can take its toll on you.
Awesome. Yeah, well, that question kind of presented itself, so I thought it'd be fun. But we can take it back a little bit to kind of your beginning origin story with wrestling. So for wrestling, what is the earliest memory that you have?
My entire life is basically kind of revolved around wrestling in one way or another. My dad was he was a roadie in a country band in the mid 80s, and Dusty Rhodes was a big fan. So Dusty was always at shows. My dad was a wrestling fan. They played a bunch of the Great American Bash shows in, 85, 86, around the same time I was born. It's been said that I was possibly conceived after a Starrcade. I don't know if that's true or not. That's what I've been told, though. So it's always been around. I've always been a wrestling fan.
Mm.
I was always going to the shows. Actually, right after I did the segment, getting misted by Muta on SmackDown, my dad texted me and was asking me if I remembered Gary Hart introduced me to Muta when I was like 3 years old, and I guess I cried.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
So it's always been around.
Yeah. Who is that band, if you don't mind me asking?
It was David Allen Coe.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, he was. Dusty and David were big best friends for a long time, and so
awesome.
That's kind of how it started.
So when you're a kid growing up watching wrestling, who were some of the wrestlers that you gravitated towards?
I was always an NWA fan. So like, it was always like the face painted guys. I was a big fan of the Road Warriors, the Muta. Sting was like top dog for a long time. Later on, like Ric Flair, but it was more like I loved Sting so much and I hated Ric Flair as a kid, and I realized why I loved Sting so much was because Ric Flair was so good. Not that Sting's not great. Sting is also great, but Flair is, say what you will about him personally, but in the ring, he is the man.
Yeah, for sure. I don't. There would probably be a lot less wrestlers, and wrestling I think would be a lot more boring without Ric Flair ever coming around.
And it's really
and rap music would be a lot more boring without Ric Flair.
Yeah. That is so true, and it kind of goes back to that thing that from a cultural standpoint, Ric Flair changed culture. It's bizarre, but I think is the best example of a villain that makes the hero, because there's so many guys that you can argue that were made by Flair, whether it's Sting, whether it's Hogan, whether it's Dusty, like it's incredible. Like
the 3-match feud with Dusty where Dusty finally got the belt, that was like peak. I can only imagine how awesome it would be to actually watch it back in the day. But
yeah, if you go back, if you just watch the stuff now and you hear the crowd react to that stuff, and you like, that's like watching an old movie like through the lens of today. Like you can't really imagine how cool The Shining is through 2023 when it really came out, or like listening to the Beatles now, like it doesn't really resonate. But like, being in that arena in the early 80s or whatever this match may have been. Yeah, whole different level.
Yeah. And a question I asked myself the other day is at what point did the crowd go from like just listening to somebody get chopped to where like the woo? And how cool would that be to be like Ric Flair, to where as soon as like all you have to do is like hit somebody in the chest and the whole
reaction. Oh yeah, that's nuts.
As a wrestler, that's got to be like pretty great. It's effortless.
It's effortless, and it doesn't have to be a wrestling show. You can go to the Charlotte Hornets game down the street, and if you go woo, there'll be 1,000 people that go woo behind you.
Yeah, I'm a big Hurricanes fan, and every time they score, they make the woo, and if it's a really good game, everybody's wooing on the parking lot out, and it's just like it's a chain. So that's awesome. So you kind of were born into wrestling. You grew up watching some of the old stuff. At what point did you decide that this is something that you wanted to do?
Again, like it was something that I always wanted to do, but when I first started, so my dad was also a wrestler in the 90s. In between doing country music, he decided he was going to be a wrestler. He didn't take it nearly as seriously as I did, because he had a family to raise by that point. I have a brother, and he was more into music, but if he had time off from the road or whatever, he would do some independent shows. So I was always around it as a kid. Then too, like I refereed matches when I was 13 years old in Tampa. Wow. Referees didn't show up to this show. Okay, well, Caleb can put on a shirt as an 8th grader and go out there and ref these matches. So I did that for a little bit. And then I moved back to Georgia freshman year of high school, and the first day I got on the bus is a kid who's a wrestler in Georgia still, named Bobby Moore. I sat next to him on the bus, and we hated each other right off the bat. Didn't like him at all. He didn't like me. But then a couple weeks later, it turned out his dad was also a wrestler in the 80s. So we were like, this was, Attitude Era was kind of over. Like the hype behind wrestling was kind of dying down at this point. but we were both big wrestling fans, and our dads were both wrestlers or former wrestlers. And we kind of always made it like a thing that, like, once we graduated, that we were going to do it. Like sophomore, junior year, I would go and we would train at my dad's house, not in a ring, but just like we would move all the furniture out of the living room, and we would do chain wrestling stuff in the living room, just on the floor. And we would do that for like an hour or two. And then, like, he lived probably an hour or two from me. So we would do that once or twice a week. And then we would drive home, and there was a park near our house where we lived. And then we would go, and he's probably 230 now, but he was well over 300 at that point. And he would wear the, what do you call it? Like the trash bag that like amateur wrestlers will do to cut weight. And we would do the trash bag, and we would jog around the park. And then we would, like, whatever we learned that day, we would go and practice for like another hour or two in the park at like 10 o'clock at night. So we started doing that like in high school. And then right after high school, my dad hooked us up with the WWA 4 school in Atlanta, which was ran by Mr. Hughes at that point. Nice. And then there was also Rob Adonis and Glacier had a school somewhat near us. So we were bouncing back and forth between those schools, and then still training chain wrestling stuff at my dad's house. That was 2004, 2005.
Wow.
That's crazy. That reminds me of, I don't know if you're familiar with like Pete Maravich, like his story where he's just like out there in the rain.
Yeah.
Free throws. That's like some dedication right there.
Doing the dribbles through his leg. Yeah. That was one of my favorite movies. That was one of the movies I had on VHS, The Pistol.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but
yeah.
I watched that 1,000 times as a child.
Yeah, he's underrated. He doesn't get credit in the world of like Larry Bird and Magic Johnson.
Like really kind of changed the game. Like, and that's, I mean,
this
can quickly become a Pistol Pete podcast.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't have any problem with that.
Yeah,
especially the movie, man. Jesus Christ. That was like one of 8 movies I had on VHS at the time. I just always watch it.
Yeah. I think that's something that like kids these days, which makes me sound like feel old, but like you don't understand, like you had the movies you had, like you don't get to go to Netflix. So like,
yeah, right.
Like people have these like super deep relationships with like sometimes
sometimes bad movies.
Yeah, like
for sure.
Yeah, there's I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's called Little Geniuses. It was like a movie I watched a lot as a kid, and it's like
I've definitely heard of it. I don't know if I've seen it.
It's about like babies that become secret agents. It's not good.
I do know what you're talking about. Yeah. I've seen it. I didn't get to watch it 1,000 times.
Yeah, I did. So like, it's just one of those things where you think it's like, oh, this is The Lion King, and you go and you try to talk to somebody else, and they're just like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So you're like Googling and trying to like, here, watch this baby dancing, and it's like this whole thing. But yeah, that's really cool. And Glacier is still doing. I know that's kind of, I have ADHD, so my brain is like, Baby Geniuses, and then right back in. But you said that you worked with Glacier. He's still doing it with the Nightmare Factory too.
Yeah, he's a good dude. He wasn't, it was like his name, it was his school name, but he wasn't there a lot. So I mean, we did get to work out with him a little bit, but it was mostly a guy named Rob Adonis, who I'm pretty sure he also trained at the power plant for WCW.
Nice.
That's awesome.
So what was it? What was the difference? Like, you've got all these like years of like kind of practicing it, doing it on your own. I'm sure you have influence from like both of your parents. What is the switch like from doing it at home to now you're doing it in a ring with somebody that's been on TV and that's currently trying to train you?
I mean, there was definitely a difference because like I was, around a bunch of other people that were, on my level or newer or a little bit above me. Like Austin Creed actually was going there at the same time. I mean,
yeah.
What's his name now?
You said it. I'm blanking.
Xavier Woods.
Yeah.
So Xavier Woods was there. So he was always good right off the bat. There were, I don't know that many of the other people really stuck with it too much longer, but you would see like, oh, this guy's doing it this way and this guy's doing it this way, and you could always tell like he had it, like Xavier Woods had it. Like he knew. I was like, well, he started like right before I did, so I was like, let me just copy everything that he's doing and see what. If I'm doing what he's doing, I know I'm doing something right.
Yeah.
Right.
Did you have like when you started a style that you wanted to kind of like emulate, or a wrestler that you kind of like a template that you had that you wanted to be?
I think anybody who is around my age, around my size, basically just wanted to be an early WCW cruiserweight. That was, I mean, I was always a Ric Flair fan, and I was always a Muta fan, and you know the list can go on and on. But like when WCW started with the cruiserweight stuff, the Dean Malenkos, Chris Benoit's, all those guys, that was when I was like, oh yeah, I can do this. So like, I just really wanted to be Dean Malenko at that point when I first started.
That's awesome. And did your character kind of reflect that, or what was your initial character when you started?
No. The originally my character was, I mean, I was, I don't know, like 160 pounds when I started, and I was real lean. And I remember I the original thing that I did was under a mask called Black Pegasus because of Benoit and Eddie Guerrero. So the original thing was actually, honestly, it was those two characters and Hayabusa. It was all three of those because at that point, that's what I was really into, was early 90s Japanese stuff. Hayabusa was another one of those guys that I really liked. So I just put all of that crap in together, and I wore a mask. And then right after that, when I actually became Caleb Konley, like I was saying, like I was lean, and people made jokes that like, oh, you don't look like a wrestler, you look like an underwear model. So I had underwear trunks, and the whole thing was I was an underwear model.
Just run with it. That's great.
Yeah, I mean that's what you got to do. Like figure out what people are, you know.
Yeah.
People perceive me as being this underwear model, so I might as well I can either go against it or I can lean into it. I leaned into it.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Kind of a sidebar, but I was kind of like looking through some things, and I saw that Impact has this character Suicide.
I've heard of him.
And according to, I don't know exactly where, but potentially that's a character that you've had some involvement with. Was it cool for you to kind of be able to go back to like wearing a mask and
hypothetically if that happened,
if the rumors
would that have been cool?
I don't really know what you guys are insinuating, but if I was to be one of the people that played Suicide, it'd be pretty cool because the lineage is pretty awesome. People like Christopher Daniels and Frankie Kazarian and TJP, a lot of guys that I look up to. And if I was to portray a masked character for Impact Wrestling, that would be pretty cool and probably change my life a little bit. You know, might get to go see Europe and Australia because of it, and spend a little bit of time in India because of it. So yeah, awesome. If hypothetically I was to play Suicide, it'd be pretty sweet.
And hypothetically, if that were the case, how do you adjust your style? Is that something that you're kind of studying the previous roles, or how much of a difference is that from your other style?
I would say it's not so much different now. When I first started hypothetically doing some of that stuff, it was basically just thrust upon me, and they said, hey, do suicide moves. So I watched a bunch of YouTube, and a lot of them were like mess ups. So I had to just like I just kind of figured it out. I threw some Frankie stuff, some TJP stuff, some Christopher Daniels stuff, and just kind of like mushed it together. You're beginning to see a pattern here of me just taking things that I like and just squishing them all together.
I think anything at this point, like even like music or anything, is there's been such a long history that's what everything is
for sure.
Like just taking like things out of a hat and putting them together with your own twist.
When studying the Suicide tape, at any point are you studying that original, hypothetically studying that original video game?
No.
It's wild that's where that comes from.
I played the video game like once or twice when it first came out. Wasn't really a big fan. I never went back and looked at it. I did find out some cool info about the suit. The suit I had it's destroyed at this point, but the suit I had was the original suit, and it was fit for Loki, who they wanted to play, but he decided not to do.
That's crazy. And match, what was it, last weekend with Drew Hood? Is that right?
There might have been a match last weekend with Drew Hood. I heard the Suicide was on that card. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool to see Drew Hood wrestling all the way out there. That's very fun. Like that's
Sorry for that derailment, but I saw an opportunity to ask, so I did. So you're starting out as this underwear model. Where do you kind of go in your first few years? Like, talk us through like the moments that kind of like led up to like your break, and what was it like starting out?
Man, so long ago. I'm trying to remember. Like I had gotten a couple breaks. Like I was in pretty good shape. I was pretty athletic. I was doing some stuff. There was a show in southern Georgia that was drawing pretty good houses, and they were bringing in a lot of guys that maybe had just been released from Deep South Wrestling, the developmental at the time in Georgia. So they were bringing all these guys and had a good little following, and I just happened to get on some of those shows. And then David Young and Elix Skipper, the Diamonds in the Rough, started taking me. Hermie Sadler was doing shows. They were basically the original Impact house shows, but they were ran by Hermie Sadler, and it was called the UWF, and it was 3/4 TNA talent, and then like 1/4 like local guys.
Yeah.
And they wanted a couple guys for the show, and it was a show. Where was it at? Somewhere on the coast of maybe like Fayetteville or something. And I rode from Atlanta to, I think, Wilmington or Fayetteville, and did these shows for Hermie Sadler, and they went pretty well. And then that was 2007, early 2007. Yeah. So I did a couple of, I think I worked Team Maction one night. I don't remember the other. But I got on that, and those were really good houses. I got paid more money that night than I'd ever been paid in wrestling before. Everything was looking pretty good, and that kind of worked its way into me becoming an intern for High Spots and moving to Charlotte in August 2007.
Is that where you make that Jake Manning connection?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Can you want to talk us through that? And I guess how Revolt came about? And I think that's an organic passage there.
Yeah. So yeah, I moved to Charlotte in 2007 and became one of Jake's few friends. He's lovable, but only to some people. So me and Jake were working here forever. That started PWX. PWX had been around in one form or another before I came up here.
Yeah.
But around 2000, what year was it? Like 2012, 2013. The people at High Spots that ran it at the time were, trying to take it a little more seriously. I had done a little bit in Japan at that point, and Jake was the booker. Jake was the booker up until the Revolt started, and the Revolt started when very, very of a shoot style. PWX was sold to this guy named Brian, and then one of his first things, like what happens when management changes hands, is the booker usually gets fired and brought, the owner brings in whoever they want to book the show, and that's what happened. They fired Jake from being the booker. So me and Zane Riley, my partner that you're going to have on the show, we decided that we were going to also quit.
Yeah.
In, solidarity of Jake losing his job. I was the champion at the time, so they didn't take very kindly to that. I finished out what I had to do. Me and Cedric had a sweet little match for the belt. He took the belt. I decided to leave for a little bit. They begged us to come back. I said, only if you're going to bring Jake back. They did not want to do it. Jake didn't want to do it. Everybody was butting heads. Yeah. Eventually, we decided that if we were allowed to do whatever we wanted, basically, we would come back, and we started the Revolt. And we started wearing Jake's colors, and people all of a sudden, put two and two together that this was, we were fighting for our friend, and it was very much a shoot. It was behind the scenes. There was a lot of frustrated phone calls and a lot of talking shit not behind each other's backs, but a lot of like just butting heads for a while at PWX, and that's kind of how it started. And I think that's why like the fans of PWX always got behind the Revolt
Yeah.
way harder than any time we would do it anywhere else, because like there was an actual revolt going on. So like the storyline was totally real and most of the fans knew it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's my first indie show was a PWX show, and I forget where, but it was at this bar, like an hour and a half from Raleigh. Like main event was Skylar and Case. But like Revolt is always like, that's one of those things that's just, to me, is like one of the fun in like North Carolina tag teams. Like, and when Jake was involved in it, it's very cool. It's just like, it's just one of those things that I really appreciate.
Yeah.
Me too. We're gonna spread the word. We're gonna get the Revolt going a little more, a little harder.
Yeah, we saw you guys at GCW against the Second City Crew. Was that what it's
called? Second Gear Crew.
Yeah, that was a really fun match. So really cool.
Man, I do not like taking chair shots.
I bet
those were rough, and like that was the first match I've ever watched where a case of beer just gets thrown in the mix. I'm like, oh, we're doing it. Okay.
You don't gotta tell Zane twice to drink a beer.
Yeah, we were at a gout show I think last week, and he was there and had a beer in his hand, and
yeah, he did.
Joined a match as a manager, like for Chet Sterling, like halfway through, and having a good time. So
I think he was actually telling me about it the other day.
Yeah. You mentioned Japan. Can you talk us through like who you worked with and how that started and kind of what that meant to you?
Japan was 01 was doing they were kind of, it was, I guess not like a tryout, I guess, but I don't know, like a young boy type of situation where you would go over there and spend 2 or 3 months or whatever it was, and you basically just live that authentic thing. Like you would, it was like I guess tryout. You'd send over matches and pictures or whatever, and they chose a couple guys. And I had a buddy, Kyle Matthews, who's still wrestling in Georgia. He retired for a little bit, he came back, but he did it. And he was just saying like how hard it was and how grueling it was. And then I knew Steve Carino a little bit, and he had done a lot of time at 01 at that point. So I spent a long time asking him if this is something he thought I should do. And he was like, yeah, but you could do it, but like, you're going to have to like start training now, like doing the squats and the push-ups, and just realize that they're going to push you. So, they accepted me to go over there. I flew over there in January 2011, and I came back right before WrestleMania that year. And it was just every day, 9 o'clock in the morning, you get in there, you do a deck of cards of the gotch cards, squats, push-ups, all that stuff. It was the hardest I'd ever trained. It was almost every day. It was grueling and hard. And I don't know if I'd want to do it today, but at the time, as a 23, 24-year-old kid, it was amazing. I was in the ring with Hidaka and Otani and Masato Tanaka. I got to wrestle Masato Tanaka. I mean, that was, it was very cool. It was very surreal. I'll never forget that experience.
Awesome. What's it like, just like adjusting to like that culture too for like an elongated period of time?
Oh, let me try to think of how many people we had. We were all in a small apartment. It was me and Prince Iakea's son, who I don't believe wrestles anymore. And then there were 2 other Americans, and then there was 4 or 5 Japanese guys also living there. And it was maybe a 2-bedroom apartment. They just had like bunks everywhere.
Yeah.
And there was 1 bathroom, tiny little kitchen with like 10 wrestlers in it. Right in the middle of downtown Tokyo. It was also, this was like early Wi-Fi. So like the apartment didn't have Wi-Fi. There was a 7-Eleven across the street. They wouldn't let you use your phone inside the building to get Wi-Fi, but if you got like right outside the window next to a freezer and you stuck your phone like right up to the window, you could get Wi-Fi. So I would like once a day I would go over there and sneak Wi-Fi for like 10 minutes so I could talk to people at home. It's honestly, it's like living on a different planet, especially in the middle of Tokyo. Like I've been to London, and I've been to Sydney, and I've been, to China. China was crazy too, but like Japan is like it's like futuristic.
Yeah.
And then like everyone is super polite and follows the rules. I remember like walking to the dojo one day, and I'm like I'm about to cross the street, and there was like 1,000 people in line to go to cross the street. And you know how like you get the walk sign, and then you'll get like a countdown to not walk anymore. Like once the countdown started, no one else would walk. And I just started right when the countdown.
Yeah.
So I'm like walking in the middle, and I looked back, and like no one's going. And I'm like, oh shit. Everyone's looking at like this crazy foreigner.
Yeah.
So it's basically just 2 months of wrestling, training, and then like getting lost in the middle of Tokyo and spending the rest of the day trying to find my way home.
That's awesome. Yeah, it definitely seems like a big adjustment, but that's kind of like, as a wrestler, like Japan is like a on your report card. It's like,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right. So you come back there, and then that's where the PWX picks up. At what point does Impact kind of start to be on your radar, and how does that kind of start to roll?
Well, right after Japan, I was doing some Ring of Honor stuff right at that time. And so Ring of Honor was using me, and then Dragon Gate USA was also starting about that time, and there was stupid indie beef between Ring of Honor and Dragon Gate USA at that point, because Gabe was the booker of Ring of Honor and then got fired, and then he started doing Dragon Gate USA. So it was this whole weird thing. And I mean, I wasn't signed anywhere, so I thought I could work both spots. I guess other people thought otherwise. So then I did Dragon Gate USA, and I signed with them for Dragon Gate USA Evolve. I had signed with them for like 4 years, and that was up in 2016. And about the same time, I got a email from Bob Ryder about doing, what was the name of the tryout show that Impact was doing back in the day?
Oh god, I remember this because it had like the judges and stuff.
Yeah, whatever that was called, I can't remember. It'll come to me. He asked me if I was interested in doing that, and I had just signed a new Evolve contract, a year Evolve contract, like 2 days before that, and I was like, "Sorry, man, I can't." And he was like, "Well, just let me know when your contract's up. We can talk about it then." And then so there wasn't. Well, it wasn't tough enough. Why? It's not tough enough. Whatever it is, but they didn't have that there. But then they brought me in. They were like, gut check. Yeah. Thank you.
No problem.
So there wasn't a gut check at that point, but they were like, but you can come down to the tapings. We're doing them this day, and we can possibly give you a tryout. And then I wrestled Eddie Edwards one day and DJ Z one day, and they were like, we're going to give you a shot.
That's awesome.
So and then I went to a bathroom, and I called my mom and freaked out, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
So jumping ahead, because I guess this isn't for a few years, but what's the origin of the Caleb with the K? How's that come together? What was that your idea? Was that idea you were super on board with? Like, how did that come together?
Well, it was the early pandemic. I had left Impact in 2018, and I spent a year kind of doing just indie stuff, and then NWA Power. And then the pandemic happened, and everything was shut down. And they had asked me about possibly doing some stuff, but they didn't really know what they were doing. And Emma was there, but she hadn't been there because of the pandemic, and they were looking for things for her to do. And they asked me if I would be interested in possibly doing this Caleb with the K thing. And honestly, right off the bat, I wasn't sure about it, but like, I mean, anytime anyone's asked me about doing anything, whether it be under a mask or not under a mask, or how do I feel about, teaming with Trevor and being the cult to lead, whatever is asked, I've just tried to do as best I could and make the best of it. And honestly, I don't think that Impact thought to, I think they wanted to reintroduce Emma to Neil Dashwood in this way, but they didn't really know how long the Caleb character would got over. And then I just like rammed it down people's throats as hard as I could and tried my best to make it goofy and stupid and what they wanted. And they kept me around for a while. So I am very much appreciative of that, because I mean, it was in the heart of the pandemic and there was no wrestling going on really. And I was basically in a ring the whole pandemic because of it.
That's awesome. And really that is a testament to you, because like, remember when it started, I'm like, he's like a work rate, like he's a wrestler. Like it's very weird to see you in that spot, but then it's like, oh, personality. Oh my God, look at him killing it.
Yeah, man. It took a second to like really, it was always like a changing thing of what it was going to be. And I just tried to make the most out of the situation.
That's awesome. It's really cool.
Awesome. So, from Impact, you kind of, now you're back. Like you said, you're trying to get the Revolt going again, and you guys are working. But as far as like your relationship with Zane and working as a tag team, what are some of the tag teams that you guys like look to, or what are some of the things you guys look for in tag team wrestling that makes you guys a good team? And I guess that question got away from me.
honestly, at this point, I mean, I love tag team wrestling, and you know, all of, I think AEW is doing a great job with all their tag team stuff. But at this point, me and Zane don't really look too much into trying to look like anybody. Honestly, all of our ideas come from, hey, is this funny? And then we rewind it into making it into a wrestling thing. Honestly, like we just throw dumb stuff that like isn't from anything and try to make it into something. You know what I mean? Like we're trying to not feel like anybody or look like anybody.
That's awesome.
And what is your like ideally your plan for the Revolt, or like kind of where do you see yourself like as a team, like hopefully in the next year or two?
I mean, I have no idea. I would love to be on national TV in, you know, one form or fashion or another with Zane doing the Revolt. I don't know that that's going to happen. There seems to be another team on TV that has a stronghold about not having us be a tag team, so that's cool. But they have 10 stars at this point, I think. I don't know how many stars they are. So, you know, we're gonna continue to do what we do, and if people like it, then they can book us. If they don't like us, then I guess we'll just sit at home and be dumb.
That's kind of the origin of the Revolt, is like anti-establishment. So that's
See, the problem is when we started doing the Revolt in 2014, 2015, being anti-establishment. I mean, wrestling's always been anti-establishment, but I feel like every single person in wrestling right now is doing the Revolts thing. So we're kind of trying to go back to the drawing board and switch it up a little bit. Seems like the wrestling world's caught up to where the Revolt was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you're so ahead of the game, I guess.
Yeah, man. We were doing dumb promo skits 10 years ago too, and now everyone's got their own little promo skits they do. It's hard being a trendsetter, man. It's hard.
Somebody that comes to mind when you're talking about that is Rayhan and Tejas.
Yeah.
You've seen some of his stuff, but like stuff that he's doing is, I'm sure it's not like trend setting, but it's some of the cooler stuff out there. And I think
Ray's very good. He's very good with this promo stuff. I hope that match he had the other night with Chase had 1 million people there, because they were promoing it like hell.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And everybody on Facebook up in arms.
A quick question. I know you're a big NBA fan. Who is your go-to NBA Jam duo?
Probably Sean Kemp and Gary Payton.
Yeah, those were.
That's a good one.
Yeah. And so I've seen some of like your merch idea is based off of Hornets. Are you a Hornets fan?
Yeah, I'm a Hornets fan. I mean, they're the shits. They're, you know, one of the worst teams I've ever seen right now. But I mean, I still like them. Honestly, a lot of the Charlotte Hornets stuff it's still being sold now. But a lot of that was when it was still the Bobcats. So it was really like no one was even thinking about the Hornets at that point.
Yeah, the Bobcats was just awful. The colors, the logo, the team. I'm pretty sure everybody would.
We're not doing very good in the sports department right now, but there's always next year.
Yeah,
maybe.
Awesome. So something we always like to ask is, as far as like wrestlers, who do you think that more people should know about?
In the Carolinas,
specifically,
anywhere. Man, I've been doing so many less indie shows here lately or the past little while. Jay Malachi, I've gotten to wrestle him a couple times.
Yeah,
really like Jay Malachi. Obviously, all the kids that were training at the High Spot School, like Rayhan and Lucky Ali and Brittany Jade, and there's just a list that goes on and on. Obviously, Savannah Evans was one of my trainees. She's killing it with Impact. I just met Drew Hood the other day. He was really fun. I liked his stuff. I've wrestled Fodder a couple times here recently. I've really enjoyed getting to work with him.
Yeah.
There's a luchador in Georgia named Vari Morales. I like wrestling with him. He's done some dark stuff for AEW. Man, so there's a lot of good guys going on right now. It's really about getting the word out there. Like, you can do it. You can do a show in Philadelphia or New York, and there can be 100 people in the crowd, and you have a good match, and there'll be 50 people in the crowd that have tweeted about it or sent pictures online, and that's how people get exposure. And I can do a show down the street, and there'll be 2,000 people in the crowd, 1,000 people in the crowd. That's 500, whatever it is. There'll be a good crowd there.
Yeah.
You have a killer match, you get out, and there's not one word online that this match ever existed. And like, I'm not saying that you just have to jump online for everything, but it's like we can only promote ourselves so much. I think every independent wrestler could do a better job promoting themselves. Obviously, I know I'm a lot lazier than I used to be about promoting myself, but at the same time, if you're a fan of something, like it, like share it. If you're a fan of something, let people know that you're a fan of it, so then other people can know that you're a fan of it. There's only so many times I can be like, hey, do you like my Caleb Konley match? Do you like my Caleb Konley shirt? You know this? But if 5 or 10 or 20 or however many fans says, oh, hey, about this shirt, I went to this show, Caleb had a great match, whoever, Drew Hood had a great match, John Schuyler was killing it, whoever it is, like, it's gonna look a lot better coming from the fans' perspective,
Yeah. I think that's good. Because, like you said, it can kind of go on deaf ears if you're just kind of out there tweeting this over again. But you see somebody that you like know from high school, or somebody you know from college that says it, it kind of has a little bit more weight.
Yeah, and it's like some of these guys go viral off of a 10-second clip, and then it changes everything. Like Alex Zane a couple years ago did a running 6:30 at a backyard show on the 4th of July or something like that, and all of a sudden he's world traveler, he's going to Japan, he's going to WWE, he's doing all this stuff, and it was literally, not that he's not a good wrestler, but it was like that was the defining moment. Like, anybody could have that moment at any time. All it takes is like for people to care.
The camera's got to be rolling.
It's kind of sad sometimes. Like, sometimes you just like you'll get in your own head, like you're out there grinding and you're wrestling 3 or 4 days a week, and you're on these shows, and some of them you might be making money, but some of them you're just doing it because you want to get better. And if no one's, you can have the 200 or 300 people in the crowd going, man, you were really kicking ass out there, but if like it never goes any further than that, you can kind of like start to get in your own head and be like, man, is this even worth it? And it's a lot to fight. Like, it seems like childish and maybe like egotistical a little bit, but like, this is your whole life, and you're just like, you're struggling and you're grinding and you're waiting for that moment to like really kick. Like, it's hard to continue like with as much energy, as much vigor as you could.
100%. To a small degree with us, like with this podcast, I can see it on a much smaller scale. But yeah, we put in a lot of work, and if you put in a lot of work into something and then like a video doesn't do well or an interview doesn't get as many views, it kind of can be hard to go through.
Oh yeah, it's that idea that you expect what you put in to get out of. Like if you put this much effort in, then there should be this much of a reward.
Hopefully someone will take notice and help you out.
Yeah,
for sure.
I completely get that. Again, to a much smaller degree, but I mean, you were grinding and putting in the work, and it from us, it's seen, and we try to promote your stuff whenever we can because you're one of those guys who's just
appreciate it,
working.
Then I only have one question. I know Christian has a question that he always likes to ask, so I'll let that be his final question. But who are some guys that you're wanting to wrestle, whether on a singles or a tag team with you and Zane?
There's a couple of guys in Georgia. They've been doing some AEW stuff here recently. The Outrunners.
Yeah,
I would really like to work those guys. I've watched a couple of their matches. I'm big fans of their stuff. I think they would fit really well with me and Zane. I would like to wrestle them. Singles wise, man, I've been lucky enough to wrestle a lot of really good talent. So at this point, like anybody at this point is really, just that's just icing on the top of the cake. Vikino or Commander, a lot of these guys that are like really kicking ass right now. I'd really love to be in the ring with them. I got to wrestle Brian Kendrick about a month ago, and I've been a fan of his ever since I started. And like I was on the road to the show like the day before, and they were like, what's one of the issues you're having right now in wrestling? I was like, I'm at a point right now where I don't ever get to wrestle someone that I really want to wrestle. It's always like, here's this new kid that he's only a couple years in. He's pretty good. He's a little green still. Can you like have a really good match with him? I'm always put in that position. And I don't hate that. I like being in that position, but sometimes it's farther. I don't get it as often as like, hey, you're going to be in the ring with this guy who is really good and knows what he's doing, and you can really learn from him,
Yeah.
Like I feel like I learn stuff from young kids also. Like you can learn stuff from any match, but like sometimes you just want to sit back and go like, here's the master. I want to learn from you today.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And the question I always ask, because I find this interesting, is I get in, like, I've been working out like pretty hardcore since November, so I'm always finding like this question interesting. What is that cheat meal looking like? That perfect cheat day? You're just going nuts.
Oh man, anything. I really like a peanut butter cheesecake or mousse. That would be in there. I'm probably gonna go like a full pizza. Probably a full pizza, like I mean, I can keep it simple. Maybe a pepperoni pizza, but if I really want to go crazy, maybe a barbecue chicken.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Probably start the day off with like, I'll have some bacon and eggs, but then I'm gonna have like the biggest bowl of Fruity Pebbles, Cocoa Pebbles, or let's say Fruity Pebbles or Cocoa Pebbles. Biggest bowl I can find in the house. Pouring as much of that as I can in there. What else? What else am I gonna get? Probably gonna have a couple White Claws with
that. There you go.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate your time. It's been
absolutely,
great
man.
To you. Really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us, especially when you have kind of no idea who we are. So, just want to thanks and say we'd love to have you on again sometime.
Sure.
We're gonna do a Revolt week, not this week, but the week after. We're gonna have you and Zane both out on the same week. So,
oh hell yeah,
do that. But yeah, just thanks again, and keep on grinding. We'll hopefully see you at a show sometime soon. But yeah,
hope so, man. What shows do you guys go to often?
We're based in the Triangle, into like the Raleigh-Durham area.
Okay.
So basically anything like
go to a lot of the DPW.
Okay.
Usually, trying to branch
in
out.
that like hour and a half window of like we've hit Greensboro a bit, Winston-Salem a bit, like, but in that kind of area, but at the same time, like it's if a cool show pops up, we're like, oh.
DPW's been really killing it lately, huh?
Oh yeah.
That's awesome. I've heard a lot of good things about their shows. I'd love to be a part of them. You guys doing shows in Raleigh? You said.
Yeah.
Man, several years ago, we did this show in Raleigh, and I don't know who booked it, but they had Cabana on it, and me and Zane. I think there was like Cabana was probably like the big name on it.
Yeah.
But they booked it upstairs at this bar, and then they realized like the show was supposed to start at like 8. It was a little bit later. Maybe it was like a 9 o'clock show because it was like a bar show. But like 7:38, they realized, hey, we can't get the ring in the bar because it was upstairs and there was like a winding staircase. And they found out because so it was like 2 levels on the Rhodes side, but if you pulled around to the back side, the top level was like the first floor, one of those kind of things.
Yeah.
So we ended up like the entire roster of the people on the show had to bring an entire ring through a window.
Oh.
On a second floor of a bar. It was the dumbest shit ever.
Yeah. Well, I bet it was a good show.
That's my good Raleigh story.
That's incredible.
The show was amazing.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
That's awesome. But yeah, we'll you've got one coming up at High Point, I think you said soon.
Salisbury on Saturday, and then Merle's Inlet on Sunday, and then what do I even have? Maybe I don't have anything next week. I've got a bunch of stuff coming up.
Yeah.
Check the socials.
Of course. Yeah, but we'll try to make it out to see you. Yeah, we appreciate your time.
All right, man. Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you so much.